Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I want to talk about farming guides today. I'm going to give you guys my opinion on farming guides, kind of why they've changed so much. I'm going to tell you right now, I will be doing one for 2024, so I want your guys' feedback on what you want to see in it. Is there certain details that weren't included in previous ones that you want to see included? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I want to give a massive shout out to all of you who are responding in the comments to the Grand Arena matchmaking. That is really good feedback. Capital Games needs to hear that feedback. So whether you're doing it on my channel, to Arnold's, or going on the forums and voicing it, it's going to be so important they hear that, because they did say it would take some time, but make sure that they're hearing the feedback in the meantime, because maybe there are things that they can implement now. So again, with that said, let's go thank my channel members so much for all of their continued support. If you guys are, interested, again, channel memberships, there's a link in the video description down below. Again, guys, I really do appreciate all of your support, whether you are at the Wampa and Jedi Master tier, and those of you who are on the council, even if you aren't yet granted the rank of Master. Thank all. I really do appreciate your support, guys, and I hope that I'm providing content that is meeting your expectations. So let's get into the game here, and let's talk about farming guides. So before the change to the new, to the Crate Dragon raid, and now even to the Speeder Bike raid, there was a lot more value to farming guides because the game was less stagnant. You knew exactly what would be good in the raid. You knew exactly, what would be good in your Grand Arena and territory battles and territory wars, right? It was pretty consistent. And you think even before Datacrons, it was even more consistent, that the meta didn't shift as often as it is now. So that made farming guides very easy, and it made it a lot simpler to follow them because there wasn't this massive fluidity that was happening, especially in the early parts of the game. But now that we have these new raids, Conquest is constantly evolving, new datacrons are constantly coming in, farming guides have not necessarily lost value, because I think they're still very important and they do a very good job to the free-to-play community, especially. But they've either need to be updated, or you need to truly understand what they are. I need to quote a great, my friend Gilby, his favorite movies are the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. And if you guys remember when they talk about the pirate code in, I think the first one, and they're more like guidelines anyway. They're not like rules to follow, they're more like guidelines. That's what a farming guide is. I mean, it says guide in the thing, but I think sometimes we think of them as rules rather than a guide. Like, hey, this is what I think is the best. It doesn't mean that every little piece that you need to follow, every little step here, right? It's giving you the overall framework that, hey, this is your major things to work on, and here's how I would get there. How you do that is on you, but again, it's really just about giving you that framework to build from. And with farming guides, right, the fluidity of the game has made it so that way some of the early stages of the game are going to constantly kind of change. But trying to keep them, consistent in a farming guide is important, because then you can say, yeah, this is the best thing to go for. Like, I still believe that going for the executor first, right, is the most important thing. Getting to your fleet crystals is the most important thing, because Fleet Arena, the rewards you earn from Fleet Arena, your like maximum amount of rewards you get, you have a far higher earning potential there for a longer period of time than you do in Grand Arena. That until you reach the like Kyber 4 in Grand Arena, you will still earn far more crystals from getting first place in Fleet Arena every day. It's why Fleet Arena crystals are so crazily important. It's why I push you to get the executor first. And that leads me into my first point about farming guides that you need to understand is a farming guide you need to understand the goal. That is the goal to get you a Galactic Legend as fast as possible? Is the goal to get you as good in GAC as possible? Is the goal just to give you a well-rounded account that will allow you to springboard into other things that create this fantastic account at a low amount of galactic power? That's kind of the guide that I go for, where you're not going to be the best player in GAC. You're not going to be the best in a territory war. You're not going to be the best in Conquest or Grand, or anywhere. You're not going to be the best probably in anything. But you combine all of those things together and you will have the best account. That's the goal of my farming guides. Understanding that allows players to have a lot better picture of what to do with a farming guide. So that's the first thing about farming guides. You need to understand, what is the goal. And with these changes to the raids, and with Conquest constantly evolving to needing new teams, I think with farming guides, what becomes very important now is that I kind of had this team that you build Executor and then you go get your Old Republic because it would help you in the new raid. It gives you a Jedi team. A spot like this in a new farming guide, I would just kind of say, hey, build a raid team. Build something to help you in the raids, or build something to help you in your conquest. By doing that, what I'm doing is I'm putting the power into your hands, that I'm trying to increase the longevity of a farming guide. Because if you went and did this, you'd end up with a solid old Republic team, but you wouldn't really have anything to use in the new raid. Like, it's not helping you with the new raid. It'll give you some other stuff, but there's things you could build for the new raid that would serve the same function as something like this Jedi team. You know, like the Jedi Revan team is a very solid team. It's definitely worth building at some point, but there's some other things that could really benefit your account almost more than this team would. So that's where I think I'm going to kind of try to make my guides last longer by placing in here, hey, here's some things to do for the raid, and then kind of have a slide of like, you know, depending on what the raid is, this is what I would build. So I'm going to try to voice that. The next thing with farming guides that I think gets very, very challenging is because the game has these things like the Lightspeed bundles that came out, right? I can't create a guide that's like, oh, if you bought this, now you do this. Like, the guides would get too personalized because everybody's journey through Galaxy of Heroes is very different. Even if two people are following the same account, depending on their activity, depending on their guild rewards, depending on just drops in general, they could have very different accounts by the end of it. And because of that, a guide, again, is really just meant to kind of keep you with almost like a horse with blinders, right? That you're kind of staying focused on your goal. And that, you know, it's just kind of to keep these blinders on you, but that you're still kind of directing the path of where you want to go. You're just trying to avoid doing things that's going to waste your GP or waste gear that otherwise you would need. So, and the other thing I think that I'm trying to accomplish with these guides, the other thing that I want you guys to understand is when you're watching these, if you're watching mine, Arnold has one, Sanjita, Calvin, the Gerbil, Nooch, AP Gains, Zareth. I mean, I think every single content creator has a farming guide somewhere. What I would recommend you do is watch a bunch of them. I know that sounds like tedious, but watch a bunch of them. See what everybody's saying. If you see everybody telling you to do the same thing, it's probably a good idea. But let's say that Fat Phil is the only one telling you to get Executor and then go straight into Jabba. Maybe you see, well, what's everybody else saying? Are they saying this? Are they saying that? And then ask the question, right? Ask, hey, why would it, what would make sense? Why would you do that? The why, right? Why is one of the most important questions in Galaxy of Heroes that oftentimes doesn't get asked. It's one of the things that I've really tried to do with all of you is that whenever I create a video or I have an opinion, I try to say the why. That by building Jabba right now, I think Jabba's going to have the most longevity. I think Leia right now, when you think of Leia right now, because the big question for a lot of players is, should I farm Jabba or should I farm Leia? Leia's the it team right now. She's the it character. She's got the datacrons, right? She's at the peak. She is at the peak of her powers. She will never get better than she is right now, right? She won't. She will never get better than she is right now. Because these datacrons are completely designed with her in mind. Completely designed with her in mind. That you give Jabba this exact same datacron, and his team will not do nearly as well as Leia will with it. Because it's designed for her team. So that's why I say, I am nervous of saying go for Leia when this datacron is really skewing a lot of those results of just how good she can be. So in my opinion, I think what we do instead, you work on Jabba, and then you start trying to get us to that place where we can make that happen, right? So Jabba, in my opinion, is better because I think his longevity will be better. He's proven the test of time. He's stood the test of time. He's proving that he's still, a top 2 galactic legend in this game without a special, unique datacron that's juicing him like crazy. So I'm very curious to see what that impact is with once Leia's datacron goes away compared to when Jabba kind of comes back in and, see how those two interact with each other, both offensively and defensively. So that's why I say Jabba, is I just feel right now I think he's got a more longevity than Leia will. Because they did say Leia was not supposed to be a defensive galactic legend, and she's been very good defensively, but how much of that is the datacron? So the next thing to think about, too, with a farming guide is that there's all these other little pieces that sometimes we can't throw into one. There's ships, right? And I can tell you to build certain ships, but what about, okay, you got Executor. Well, what fleet do you build next? And that can be very difficult to add in there because you're like, well, I tell you just to go build a malevolence fleet. Okay, but which ones make sense and how does that, there's a lot that goes into it. So I think one of the big things with a farming guide that you've got to learn is fill the gaps. That as soon as I complete, farming my Seer Junda, I know exactly what's going to take the place of that node, right? As soon as I get the signal data I need, I know exactly what I'm going to start farming out of the cantina. It's decisions like that in a farming guide, sometimes you can't always, like, you're like, oh, farm this character and then farm this character. And then you're like, well, what if I just finish this one? Like, where do I go from here? I'm still in the middle of my Leia farm, but I have all the characters. Okay, so I start farming shards here. So it's kind of one of those things where I can tell you to do things, but you've got to be intuitive and understand that as you finish character A and you finish character B, you start farming C and D. And then as you're finishing C and D, you move on to E and F. And then maybe, hey, I've got some extra energy. I'm going to start moving on to G. I know that was a really long way to say that, but I hope it makes sense that you've got to be intuitive. You can't just say, okay, I'm farming for Executor. All right, I got Executor. Now I can move on and start working on your characters here. You should be farming these characters as you're, relicking these ones. You should be farming these ones as you're working gear. That it's a constant, like, one row is gear, the row above it's characters, or, you're kind of trying to spread out as much as you can to get everything done. So that is one other thing with farming guides. I think you've got to kind of be intuitive. You've got to understand how it's all rolling together, that it's one constant thing, right? It's constantly churning. The final thing I want to say with farming guides, I want to ask for you guys, let me know if for 2024, I'll be releasing it in January. You let me know what you want to see. How often do you want me to update it? Do you just want updates for, when a new raid comes? Do you want a half-year update? Do you want every 3 months? You let me know how you want to see the farming guide. Are there pieces to it that were not included in my previous ones that you would like included? Do you not want me to go as far into the future with it, right? That you think, like, I went all the way from, hey, get this GL, get this get these things, get this GL, and then, like, kind of went all the way down here. Is it better that you're like, hey, Phil, you know what? I'd rather a much more, broader view, that you don't need to go into the crazy detail here. Just give us kind of the highlights at each of these places, right? So you guys let me know how you want to see that. You let me know what you think is going to benefit you the most. And let me know if it's like, hey, if I buy these packs, what do I do? Do I kind of add things like that in? I'll try to do my best for all of you guys because, you are the ones I make content for. So all of that said, I do think farming guides are very important to this game, but I think that the way we use them has to change. It's no longer this step-by-step process that you can't deviate from, that I think instead it's more of this, hey, your overarching goal is here, but I might need to take detours here and here to continue that, right? That your path is not this, I think it used to almost be like stairs, right? That you just kind of were climbing stairs, where now I think it's much more of this like kind of jungle path, right? Where you're weaving in and out, you're climbing up and climbing down because of the fluidity of the game, right? That the game's kind of changing and it's going to take you through these different ways, but your end result is still the same. It may just take you a little bit longer to, snake your way through it. So you guys let me know your thoughts. I love all of you. May the force be with you, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.